So I declare this meeting of the Planning Committee for the Port Phillip City Council open, and I welcome the members of the public who are here tonight. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the Yalukit Willem clan of the Boonwurrung. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. So Council has a local law that determines how this meeting will be conducted tonight. There is a time allotted in tonight's agenda for public question time, and there is also an opportunity for members of the public to ask a question or make a comment on a specific item on tonight's agenda. This will be done prior to the committee considering the item. If you wish to ask a question or speak to a report, please complete the blue form that is available at the table just outside the chamber and hand it to a staff member. If you have already registered online, please ensure you let a staff member know you are present. I encourage you to try to limit your question and comments to around 3 minutes and try to avoid repeating any points that have been previously made by other speakers. Please note that this committee can only address questions and deal with items within its delegation, that is planning matters, and please note that all planning committee meetings are now being live streamed. The live streaming allows the community to watch and listen to meetings in real time or watch them later. But please also note, in accordance with Council's local law, that this meeting cannot be filmed or audio taped unless permission is granted by the Chair. And in the unlikely event of an emergency evacuation, please follow the instructions of the emergency warden, which is Rebecca, as per usual. Or is it Kirsty tonight? It's you, Rebecca. Okay, great. So, councillors, do we have any apologies tonight?
Councillor Brand is a apology.
And while you're on the microphone, can I have a motion to accept these apologies and grant a leave of absence? Okay, so that's a motion put forward by Councillor Bond and seconded by Councillor Pearl. All those in favour? That is passed. So the second item on the agenda tonight is the minutes of the previous meetings. So these minutes were circulated from the meeting held on the 24th of July 2019. Are there any questions regarding these minutes? If not, can I have a motion to confirm these minutes? That's Councillor Voss and seconded by Councillor Gross. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? That is passed unanimously. Moving on to declarations of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest in the matter being discussed or matters being discussed at tonight's meeting? No. We have public question time, but councillors, we have no one who has requested to ask a question, so we'll just move on through to councillor question time. Councillors, are there any questions for the officers? Again, no one. So let's go to the presentations of reports. So the first one is 6.1, which is Amendment C142, which is the review of Heritage Overlay 6 East St Kilda. And this is the consideration of submissions and request to proceed to independent planning panel. So, councillors, we have received a couple of requests from members of the public to speak to this item. So, firstly, I call on Inga Walton. If you would come into the seat in the middle there, please state your name and suburb for the record, firstly.
Councillors, my name is Inga Walton and I appear in reference to 42 Hotham Street, East St Kilda.
Inga, can I just ask, you are also going to speak on behalf of your neighbour who's ill, is that correct? Will you speak as a group or will you present first and then speak to her concerns?
I will speak to her concerns after I've spoken. As Council was informed last year at the last planning meeting, Rabitsen Mina Gordon suffers from the degenerative condition Parkinson's. Rabitsen Mina is now unable to drive, and she called me this afternoon indicating that she was not well enough to present herself to you this evening. She has sent me something she would like me to read for her.
Great. All right, well, why don't you start off with your comments or questions? Thank you.
My comments are that since the planning meeting of 12 December last year, my parents have not received a concerted response from anyone at Council about our objections raised in two previous letters, July last year and June this year. What has been tabled are dismissive dot points, such as those in Attachment 4, Amendment C142, that don't adequately respond to the complaints we have made. We contend that our repeatedly expressed views are being obfuscated out of the record. For my family, this process is akin to being trapped inside a Franz Kafka novella. The 1993 film Groundhog Day also comes to mind. With particular reference to the name Summers House, which was applied to our property in the David Helms Heritage Planning Report without our permission or consent, council officers have sidestepped our strenuous objection to this. Their response is to reiterate that the property was built by Harold Summers some 93 years ago. Summers' connection to the property was not mentioned in the previous reports of von Hartel-Trethauern in 1992 or Andrew Ward in 1998 and 2000 respectively. The Blom family, who owned the property prior to us, were entirely unaware of this association. This link was first raised, but not confirmed outright, in the Heritage Alliance study of 2004. We are actually not interested in Mr. Summers. What is at issue here is the arrogant presumption that David Helms Heritage Planning, or indeed Port Phillip Council, has the right to apply a made-up name of their choosing to a privately owned property without any consultation with the owner. The substance of our objection is being deliberately misrepresented by council officers to imply that we simply cannot read. We are then referred back to the Helms report as proof that this name is now an established fact. It most certainly is not. What is a fact is that 42 Hotham has never had a place name associated with it in its history. It has never been referred to as Summers House in a single document prior to the Helms report of December 2016. To have this invented name applied to the property by a consultant represents an egregious affront to the owners. It serves an agenda that is entirely contrary to our own and is a further erosion of our rights as the property owner. We want this reference to Summers House removed. It is actually our house. This is the latest escalation in a protracted and extremely stressful heritage process that has been imposed on my family. It is one that has disenfranchised us in relation to decisions affecting our property, which we have owned for 20 years. That we did not respond to a letter we knew nothing about back in 2005 is regularly invoked as sufficient justification for the heritage overlay imposed on our home. We were not informed of the overlay itself until last year. Reference was made to the letter allegedly sent 25 February 2005 at the previous planning meeting. We never received such a letter from the council, and we have still not seen a copy of it 14 years later. This is my submission to you, councillors.
Thank you. I just will ask Ms Walton, please don't, if we could keep it not being personal towards any officers, just state your facts and your view, but not degrade any officers in the process, if that's okay.
Well, I'm simply giving you our view, and
I know, but
it has been extremely frustrating for us that nobody has replied to us personally, and then we get these dot points that we have to download from the website that don't address our complaints.
Okay, so I understand your frustration, but I also think that we need to keep things polite, not personal, and we're happy to respond. I will ask officers some of your questions in a moment. So I believe now you're speaking on the part of Mina Gordon.
Yes, Rabitsen Mina would like me to read this statement on her behalf. To the councillors, you were chosen by democratic process to ensure the residents and homeowners of Port Phillip that the neighbourhood will be a safe, clean and friendly place to live in. You represent the people who elected you, and we, the voters, trust that you have our welfare and interests at heart. Perhaps there is something that I am unaware of, because I don't quite get it. Why is Port Phillip Council so intent on putting a heritage label on as many properties as possible? Is this to deter developers? Well, they seem to have VCAT in their back pockets. Perhaps the secret agenda is to create a tourist precinct and get lots of visitors. But no thank you. We citizens have already given our biggest park to the Grand Prix for that purpose. I don't expect an answer, although I would like one, because I did not get any answer to the points that I brought up in my previous letters. I didn't even get my submission recorded under the correct address. I would be pleasantly surprised if someone could respond to the following. Question 1. What is the purpose of this heritage overlay? Question 2. How will the neighbourhood benefit? How will the individual homeowners benefit? Question 3. Will it make it harder to sell our properties? Question 4. Will it bring the price down on an individual property? Question 5. Will it make it harder to repair or renovate a property? Question 6. At what point of disrepair will a property be allowed to be torn down? Question 7. Will there be restrictions on what may be built in its place? Question 8. Why were the properties that were considered of no significance in previous reports, including that of 2004, now being targeted by Port Phillip Council? 9. Is there any possibility at all of getting our property, 44 Hotham Street, our residence and only financial asset, taken off this list of properties presently under consideration for the heritage overlay? I do hope that our elected councillors will reconsider this exercise or at least explain it to me. Mina Gordon.
Thank you very much. So we did have one other person registered to speak, Shalom Azaris, but I don't believe he's here yet. All right. So, councillors, did you have any questions you would like to ask Councillor Gross?
Just wanted, if I could ask the officers, it seems to me that just the title of is it 42 Hotham Street, of Summers House, that's not, is that important from a heritage point of view, and could we just delete that and just refer to it as 42 Hotham Street?
Who's going to take the question, Mr. Jewell?
It's a bit of a hard question, I know.
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly we could look into removing or amending the name of the property
you speak
to
up, Mr.
42
Jewell?
Hotham Street. Oh, really? Sorry, is that better? Apologies. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, certainly we could look at amending the name of the property in this particular instance to its address, 42 Hotham Street.
And can I ask, would you need an amendment to the recommendation, or would you just do that exercising officer's discretion? I can write an amendment which you can share.
Through you, Madam Chair. I think it would be preferable to move an amendment.
Okay,
Okay, Councillor Simic. Did you have any questions? All right. No? Okay, Councillor Voss, did you have a question?
Sorry, can I please confirm that it is 42? I can only see a submission from 44 Hotham Street. So just wanted to get that correct, please.
Submission number 8, it is 42 Hotham Street.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask the question around the request that the Peace Speaker made about receiving a copy of the letter from 2005. I understand that we've got a copy of that letter. Why hasn't the Speaker been given a copy of that letter?
Who would like to answer that question?
Through you, Madam Chair, we can provide a copy of that letter.
Are there further questions, Councillor Pearl? Is that a no? I would be interested in taking up some of the questions that Ms. Gordon took on. So I guess I don't know if that is something that we would reply in writing or tonight around things like the purpose of the current review. what kind of restrictions will be placed on repairs? Does it matter? Well, did you get that list of 9 questions, or would we be able to do we need a copy of that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I didn't quite get all 9 of them. I couldn't write that fast.
We've got a copy of them there. Are they ones you would want to have a look at now, or would you like to take them on notice and respond?
But we can take those on notice and respond.
Take those on respond. Yes. Yep. Ms. Rossi.
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to clarify that Council did adopt its Port Phillip Heritage policy and review program to protect the heritage fabric of our community and avoid any inappropriate design. And the intent is to review those heritage controls in accordance with a program to ensure that the heritage controls are still valid and do protect the heritage fabric of our municipality in accordance with Council's endorsed policy.
Councillor Voss.
Just wondering if the officers can explain what the next process entails and what the opportunities for the objectors are now.
Through you, Madam Chair, if Planning Committee endorses this recommendation or an alternate recommendation, we will request the Minister for Planning to appoint an independent planning panel. We will also write to all of the submitters to let them know that we have requested an independent planning panel, at which point all submitters will have the opportunity to present their case, either themselves or via representation, to that panel. The directions hearing for that is set for the week beginning the 30th of September this year, and the planning panel for that is preset for the week beginning 28th of October this year. And then following that, the planning panel will make a recommendation to Council, at which point we will present those findings back to Planning Committee or Council.
Can I just clarify a little bit further, Ms. Hodgson? So will the objectors be sent the information about all of these various panels so that they are able to attend and make a submission?
Yes, they will. They'll be sent through you, Madam Chair. Yes, they will.
Are there any further questions, councillors? Councillor Voss.
Just one more in relation to the person that came and spoke now. So it seems from what I can understand here is that there was a change to that property in 2005, and really there's actually no substantial change till today, except for some alterations to the citation. Am I correct in making that observation, or is there anything more significant?
Ms. Hodgson.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. The overall grading of the property is proposed to stay the same, which is currently significant. It's being proposed to be removed from its individual heritage overlay and placed in a precinct based on the fact that it's more alike to other properties within that precinct.
Following up question.
So just wanting to understand, is there any pros and cons to that process occurring from a resident's perspective?
So, Ms. White, are you taking that question?
Through you, Madam Chair. So, not necessarily. The removing it from one overlay and placing it in another overlay just means that the significance is more alike to the precinct. It will still have its individual citation, so it's still recognised for its individual significance. And in terms of how the heritage overlay itself will operate, there's no changes.
Are there any further questions? I think our second speaker just arrived, so I might just hold for a moment. I might ask one other question, if I may, in the meantime. So, in these reviews, obviously more information comes to light. So is the idea of the review to capture things that we missed last time, or things that may have changed in terms of history that we didn't know then may need to be applied now? Is that kind of one of the reasons for this review?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's correct. So over time, our understanding of heritage does change and evolve, and communities' expectations around what they also consider to be heritage evolve and change. And as the municipalities continue to grow and we have lost significant heritage fabric from parts of the municipality, residents have expressed their concern to us many times about their wish to protect other properties and other styles and types of properties and apply heritage overlays to them. So these reviews are part of that process of systematically looking across the municipality where there are gaps or where there have been changes in appreciation of that kind of heritage detail and the opportunity for us to reassess properties.
Okay, so we have had some more people to speak to this particular item, councillors. So I will give leave for them to have their 3 minutes since they have arrived, because we have not moved the motion yet to take this to the next stage. So firstly, I will call on Shalom Izaris. If you could take the seat, turn the microphone on, and please state your name and suburb.
Shalom Lazarus and St Kilda East.
If you could please take the next, you've got 3 minutes, if you could explain your support or objection to what we are considering.
Sure. Okay. We, myself, my wife and family bought a property about a year ago, and 5 at 226 or just 226 Elmer Road, and about 6 months in got notice it was becoming heritage listed significant. My question is, and this was brought up previously and I don't think it was justifiably answered, that when council does the due process to list a property as heritage, it does impact the price of the property. There were answers given by the previous committee like a year ago or 6 months ago when you originally had this meeting, where you said that it doesn't impact it or it helps the general suburb. But the fact is, speaking to 4 or 5 agencies in the area, that when a house is listed, house, apartment, property is listed as heritage, it does negatively impact the property. And the council does state on the website that they don't provide any financial help for upkeep of a property or the impact that it has on the property. And when someone buys a property as their main investment for life, it's definitely a big hit, as the real estate agents say. And I've seen when I was buying properties, it does limit. So my question is, it's obviously legal what council's doing, and council has really worked with us. We're the property that it's actually detailed on the drawing where we're able to build, because it was so limited. Our property is so small that if we would build anything on a second story, it would be 1 meter wide. So they gave us a little bit more leeway, which we were very grateful for, and that was actually just passed. So I am grateful for council for working with us. But my question is a broader question which applies to many properties, but obviously significantly for us. We're now able to put two bedrooms upstairs. We bought a property that we wanted to raise a family in, and we're limited. So it does impact families financially, restrict them, and I just want to know what council's suggestion, answer is to that, how that's reconciled with, the rights of a tenant, the rights of someone who lives in a council, if that can be answered.
Thank you. Is that something that you would want to respond to now, or?
I'm happy to address that issue in a speech.
You're happy to address that in the speech, but is there any response officers that you could give at this moment around whether price cost is a consideration of planning?
Through you, Madam Chair. It is true that the impact on property values is not a consideration when we consider a heritage overlay, and that's a position that's been consistently upheld at planning panels. a good majority of the municipality is in a heritage overlay, and one of the reasons, or one of the things that makes the municipality attractive to its residents and to people who choose to buy property here is the heritage qualities of its neighbourhoods. So at a macro level, we don't necessarily agree that putting a heritage overlay on a property does dampen the price or value of properties overall.
Thank you. And Councillor Gross, that you will address that in your speech.
I'll talk about those issues.
Thank you. Now we have a third speaker, councillors. So Mina Gordon has come to join us. And would you like to speak to the room, Ms. Gordon? Yeah, if you come over to the chair and turn the microphone on and state your name and suburb, and then ask your questions or make your comment.
Okay, I am Mina Gordon, and my property is at 44 Hotham Street. You see, Kilda, we've been living there for the last almost 30 years. And I have Parkinson's disease. I've had it for 20 years already. And it is a degenerative disease. And my daughter pointed out to me today that I should make a personal plea for for our property not to be under the heritage overlay, because if I'm going to I might need to modify certain things in the house in order for it to be easier for me to live in my own house for as long as possible. For example, if we might have to adjust the hallway to be a little wider. We might have to change a lot of things. We would like to have the option of even building something purposely built to help me, because I have a friend whose husband went into nursing home very early, very young, because they were living in an old house and it was impossible for him to maneuver a wheelchair through it. So I'm asking a special dispensation for our particular property at 44 Hotham Street. And the other thing is that we might want to build other units on the property so that my children can live near me and help me. And that is why I came here especially to tell you this.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Officers, could we clarify, though, that the heritage overlay does not apply to the inside of the house, and that is there still possibility of adjusting the inside of the house and making additions to a house in a heritage overlay, please?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct. In most of these instances, the heritage overlay doesn't apply to the internals of a house unless it's something that's specifically included in the citation, and that is uncommon in residential properties unless they're of an exceptional nature. So in this particular instance, internal modification of the house is not something that would trigger an application under the heritage overlay.
And just additionally to that, could you answer that there is still room to put additions and extensions onto heritage buildings and heritage overlay, or not?
Through you, Madam Chair. A heritage overlay does not prevent development. A heritage overlay rather ensures that heritage matters need to be considered at the planning permit stage, and so that council can make consideration about whether that or the appropriate amount of heritage fabric is being retained or modified.
Thank you. Councillors, do we have any other questions? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this recommendation or something different? Councillor Gross would move it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor.
I'm moving moving the officer's recommendation plus an additional one which I hope will be typed in, which refers to the request made to remove the name from the citation subject to there being no change to the efficacy of the heritage citation of 42 Hotham Street.
Can I clarify, Councillor Gross, is that just the name of the property, or is it in the whole of the citation?
Just the name.
The name
It's
of the
the
report.
name in the report.
But it doesn't. It still could be referred to in the historical citation itself.
42, Dick. Yeah. Sorry, it's
all
42.
all the others just say house or flats, unless there's a specific name. It's a meaningless change. It doesn't change anything on the house. It's just the name at the top of it. I'll go back to my council documents. See there where it says place name, shops and residences. That one just says Summerfield House. So if you go to any of these other ones,
It's just our document, not
no, it's not the name. We're not changing the name of the house. Again, shops and residences. Shops and residences. And it's shops. That's just. It was further up the top. It just said Summerfield House, so you just change. They'll just change it to house.
They'll just change it to
home.
house.
See, there's that one there, place name, home. Or house, sorry. I haven't got glasses, so I don't actually have. See that one, house? Louise. And then you just put in your other names, so you could just go house and then Summerfield House. It's a nothing change.
Is there nothing changed?
Makes her happy, so she's still not going to get it. Still in the heritage. Not to change a thing that she can do with it.
So is that correct, Councillor Gross?
Yep, that looks good.
Okay, so that's what you're moving. So you're moving it. Do I have a seconder? Yeah. Councillor Bond. Got him. Okay, I will allow. Are there any questions of councillors on this particular adjustment before we go to speaking to it? I have a question of anyone else. What is the efficacy of the heritage citation like? I don't understand what that actually means.
Well, what I'm intending to say is, if they remove the name and it's at the top of the citation, it goes house, then name, will it affect the efficacy of the citation? I think it won't, but I'm just giving officers a discretion.
Mr. Jewell?
Through you, Madam Chair, without the citation in front of me, I don't believe that it will affect the efficacy of the citation if the name is removed from the title.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions before I ask Councillor Gross to speak? No? Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the recommendation with the slight adjustment?
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. This is just an update, an important and overdue update to the heritage regime in Eastern Kilda. And since the last time it was reviewed in early 2000s, times have changed and it needs to be updated. Can I say to the three people who've come and spoken to us, I've tried to take into account with this amendment the concerns about having the name Summers House in, so that I've addressed that particular issue. Secondly, I wanted to say about the issue of internal amendment. If, because of your illness, you wish to amend the internals to make it more appropriate because of your illness, then that is fine. This only impacts the outside, and the inside, where if you need to make any amendments or changes or renovations, that can all occur. On Mr. Lazarus's concerns, all I can say to you is that I'm fortunate enough to own 2 houses. Both of them have got a very high heritage rating on them. For the one in St Kilda, I've done 3 renovations, including a new fence. It hasn't been an encumbrance or an inconvenience at all. But I think it has protected what is really important about that house, which is its heritage fabric and the story that it tells the community about housing in the area. Look, it's a bit of a pain in the neck when you have to do a renovation and you have to negotiate with council. I don't deny that. I got told to completely redesign my fence. Pain in the neck. But it was fine. In the end, it was fine. So people do worry about heritage overlays and heritage protection. And I sort of want to repeat what Mr. Dewar said. There's been massive heritage protection in Port Phillip. I think we've got more houses protected by a heritage overlay. The one thing I'd say a couple of things. First of all, it actually hasn't inhibited a lot of the demolition that I deeply regret. It inhibits some renovation, but not much. And the second thing is that at the same time, over the past 15 years, prior to the last pullback in land prices, that we've had this heritage protection, we've also seen a massive increase in housing prices in Port Phillip for reasons other than the heritage overlay, gentrification, the transport advantages that people enjoy in Port Phillip, and for all those other reasons that affect housing prices. So I understand that people are very nervous when these heritage changes are made, and all I can say is that these are changes that I've appreciated personally. I don't think they've diminished my wealth at all because of the impact on the housing prices. And finally, I don't think they've inhibited me because I've done 2 renovations and got a new fence. So I think it'll be fine. That's what I say to people. And your evidence is that, with negotiation with the council officers, you can put on a second story. So it is scary when a third party interferes with your most precious asset. I get that. But I would say to you that it's still something that allows you to live a life and deal with your property as you need to.
Councillor Bond?
Yes, generally speaking, I think heritage is a good thing, or heritage protections is a good thing. And I know, whenever it's in the process of being applied to your own place, it can be quite stressful, and occasionally we do get people object to it. But more so, we have people turn up to these chambers and speak to us requesting or wanting to know why the house next to them hasn't got any heritage on it, and they found that out because someone's proposing to build a great big block of flats there. So they'll come to us saying how it's a travesty that this place hasn't got heritage protection, and you shouldn't be allowed to demolish what's there, or you shouldn't be allowed to destroy what's there, and you shouldn't be allowed to build a 3-storey block of flats to the fence that are going to overlook my property, and that's going to diminish the value of my property. So I think your fears that having a heritage protection may impact the value of your property is probably going to be outweighed by the fact that, if we get this heritage system right, no one's going to be able to knock down the house next to you and impose a great big structure on you. So as a cluster, as a group of houses in your particular area, you're all protected by this heritage protection that we have on it. And as a cluster, the value of your properties is certainly much greater as together than any individual site in this area. So, we do these reviews because occasionally we do miss properties in previous reviews. I know in Elwood there's groups of residents down there who want us to relook at Elwood because they think there are properties down there that have been missed and that we need to impose heritage restrictions onto, and we are investigating that at some point in time. So don't be afraid of this. It doesn't stop you doing work to your house. It just means the work you can do on your house needs to respect the heritage of that property. It's not a total ban. In many instances, it doesn't cover the internal wall, so it doesn't mean you can't do anything. It just means that you need to respect your property and your neighbour's property, and your neighbours need to respect your property should they ever choose to do something also. So it's, as a cluster, I think you are much better off having this heritage. And Port Phillip is such a great place because we have very early on decided to look after our heritage. We've got some of Melbourne's most expensive property per square metre through Middle Park and Albert Park because of the heritage protections that are in that area. If they didn't have that and people were just allowed to knock places down and build anything they wanted to, there's no way those places would be as valuable as they are at present. So I don't believe it has negatively impacted as overall. I think you will benefit by being in this than not being in it.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Gross, could you turn your microphone off too, please? Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this? No one else? Well, then I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you to the people that have come to speak. So now moving on, we have one more item, which is 6.2, and I get it up on my screen, which is the statutory
Can I move that?
Planning. Sorry?
Can I move that?
Yep, okay, great. Councillor Gross and Councillor Bond moved and seconded. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this or ask any questions of the officers?
No, thank you.
Okay, all those in favour? That is passed unanimously. Okay, so councillors, there is no urgent business tonight and there is no confidential items tonight. So there being no further business, I declare the meeting closed.